The biggest road race in Maine is now over, but there's one person who's been part of the Beach to Beacon 10K from the start whom you might not know about. He is the race announcer, Tony Revis.
Revis has been calling road races around the country for NBC and ESPN for years. He and the race's founder, gold medalist Joan Benoit Samuelson, have a friendship that goes back decades, but that's not the only story he has to tell.
I always say, when people say, what do you do for a living? And I say, I broadcast and announce at running events. People say, how do you like it? And I say, well, it's better than being a prison guard. That's my bar. That's my standard. If it's better than being a prison guard, and it's a lot better than being a prison guard. And no matter what else you don't have in common with people, if you run with them, you know something about them. It transcends age. It transcends gender, religion, politics. It's stripped down to the bone. And you're just trying to go from point A to point B. It's a difficult pleasure, and you get to be part of that.
And this didn't just kind of land in your lap. I mean, I guess it did, but you've known Joni.
I've known Joni since the late 70s. I mean, I was there covering the Boston Marathon in 1979 when she won her first race with the backwards baseball cap on, the Bowdoin singlet. We knew her, we used to run with her. And then in '83, she was coaching at BU. And so we would train on the Charles River together and know her for all these years. And it's just, you know, you got to be fortunate in who your champions are, because it's a meritocracy. And we got real lucky with Joan.
So talk about how you have been announcing the race, but you're also a writer as well. And one thing that you just wrote about was your parents' love story. And this was a story that up until you were older, you didn't even really know the full version of it.
We didn't know it. Most war veterans don't like to talk about their experiences because they were difficult. And Mom and Pop had very difficult war experiences in World War II.
Very different indeed. His mother was a Polish countess and lived in a 16th century castle. She was just 17 when the Germans invaded Poland, triggering World War II in Europe. A hunting lodge on the family's property would become the headquarters for the Polish army and the country's resistance movement.
Mom spoke fluent German, so she could go to cafes and be young and attractive and talk to German soldiers. And they saw her as an innocent, didn't take her seriously, I guess, or whatever, or flirting with her. And so they told her things, and then she would go back and tell her people. And then she would run ammunition and guns. One time, she had to transport a machine gun to her unit in the forest. So they put the machine gun under the hay in this horse-drawn cart. And so all of a sudden, she turned the corner on the way to her unit, and there they were, 200 meters up the road, were these 3 Germans with automatic weapons and a checkpoint. Now, in her breast pocket, she carried her papers and her pistol. And she asked, now she can't run because they saw her too. So what are you going to do? What are you going to do? You going to try to shoot your way out of this or try to talk your way out of this? And so she went up there, and one guy went around back and poked in the straw, but not too seriously, and said, and what haben Sie under? What do you have underneath? And she, with a smile, said, a machine gun, what else? And they started to laugh, asked her if she'd like a drink. Jawohl, would you like to share a cigarette? Jawohl. Stepped down, had a little, talk with them. Next thing you know, he says, listen, I have to leave because there's a curfew and I have to get my machine gun. And they laughed again, and up went the checkpoint, and off she went into the forest to deliver her machine gun.
Wow.
This is the kind of life she was leading. On the other hand, Pop was a manager of a hotel in St. Louis. And when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor in '41, he joined the military, became an officer. And so he was a lieutenant who got shipped overseas finally in 1944. And in September of 1944, in a firefight in a hill in Italy, he was captured. And he spent 5 months in German prison camp. He escaped with another guy in January of '45 and made their way east trying to find an American mission to repatriate with. As it turns out, on Valentine's Day, 1945, he was at the Artist Cafe in Lublin, Poland, and in walked Mom. And he said, that's the one for me. 11 days later, not speaking the same language, they walked down the aisle and were married.
Oh my goodness.
10 days later, Pop had to leave. Couldn't take her with him. Left her with a note saying she's married to an American Army officer. Here's my serial number, my mother's address in St. Louis. Help if you can, any American. And Pop just said, just find your way to Americans.
The two would eventually be reunited and spend 64 years together.
And we in the family said, they didn't speak the same language in the time they met. And there was so they believe that they never really did. They speak the same language. But they were enormously devoted to one another. You could just tell. They both had gone through hell. I mean, both of them had killed people. Both of them had almost been killed any number of times. I mean, very nearly killed. And so they saw the dark side of human nature, and in one another they saw a kindred spirit.
The readers certainly take something away from the story, but what did you take away from kind of putting this all together and finally getting it out of your head and getting it onto paper?
Well, the great thing was that I just got to know them so much better. In 1987, the World Cross Country Championships were being run in Warsaw, Poland.
Oh, wow.
I was covering it. I took Mom with me. I'd never met my uncles and aunts before, my first cousins, and all of a sudden I went back to the castle, I went back to the Artist Cafe in Lublin, went back to the church where they were married, had my tape recorder at the time, and I also had my journals. I'm just taking notes, studied family archives, and just slowly over the years just built it up, and then once you built it up, then you begin to reduce it. And very much like a piece of sculpture, it's not finished when there's nothing left to add. It's finished when there's nothing left to take away. And that's what I did. It just brought me so much closer to them and the memory of them, and just realizing I was proximate to this great story. And it was the antecedent to my life. I mean, my life came from this story. And I knew the guts of the story my whole life, but not the detail, the pulse of it. And so getting to know it in that kind of detail, very rewarding, very rewarding.
I gotta say, my head was swirling when I got done talking to Tony. It's swirling again, because how does something like that happen?
Yeah, so many questions. Just to rattle off maybe the big one, getting married after having known each other for a week and a half.
Not speaking the same language.
And then staying married for 64 years.
That photo of them too. Oh my! When I saw it the first time, I was like, "Wow!" Like true love right there. And he said, as soon as she walked into that cafe, there she is.
That's just such an extraordinary story on so many levels.
Yes, yes. And so the book is named after Tony's parents, Bisia and Isham, the Countess and the P.O.W. We're going to have a link for the book on our website and mobile app for you.